little late, family. Was having a little technical difficulty. I went on, real quick, and I was having some problems behind the scenes, so I had to uh, delete that live and go back in and start from the beginning. But I like to start, much rather start. I got to start trying to get a little live earlier than what I'm doing because I'm normally going live around 1 and 2. I like to, turn that into, going live about maybe like 11 or 12. Because by the time you get done with the live, it seems like most of the early day is gone. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm here. So I'm doing my Saturday, tap in with the family, my early Saturday tap in. There's a lot of things to discuss. A lot of relevant things going on. In the news and things like that. A lot of things going on. Truth be told, and I don't got nobody in here yet, but I ain't going to be on here too long, so I ain't going to waste too much time getting at it. What is, all of the family, you could watch this on the playback. Let me know, in the comments, what y'all watching now on TV, what y'all doing, for the weekend, because I'm planning on, maybe I hope that Final Destination, I think that came out, the new Final Destination, because I'm a horror buff, I like those horror movies, and that got our brother in it, the Candyman, and that was his last, role before, he died just recently, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. Godfather of Harlem is out as well. That's looking real good. I always liked the Godfather of Harlem. I thought they was gonna be done, truth be told, with the Godfather of Harlem once our good brother Malcolm died in the last season, but they brought it back. So, I'm watching that now. Truth be told, it's good. Bumpy Johnson stands on a lot of, FBA business. He's trying to he's getting out of the game now, and looking to, just build things, independent of, the Italian mob, and they try to always, have their hands in the black community, but he's trying to get away from them and just build things, formed by black people, to benefit black people. So I respect that aspect of, Bumpy Johnson. But they introduced Frank Lucas to the equation, and they got Frank Lucas on there, acting a mess, and going against the grain, going against the greater good of what Bumpy Johnson is trying to do. So I really don't like that aspect of it, but who knows if it's true because with the movies and things they add a little bit, take a little bit, and just to sensationalize, the movies and the TV. So I don't know if that's all the way accurate as to what they got, Frank Lucas running around in there doing, but yeah, and I'm also looking forward to watching The Shy too. The Shy just came back out. With new seasons, I've been following that from the beginning. So The Shy was a good episode. It's based out there in Chicago. You know, and it's a good TV show. And I'm also I don't know if any of the family Raising Canaan, I'm tapped in with that too. In the Power Book, 50 Cent put out the Raising Canaan, and this is basically about his character he plays, Canaan. So it shows how Canaan came about into the lifestyle, this, that, and the third. So that's good too. It's a lot of good things going on, in TV right now. A lot of good things going on in black television. So I'm up on it. Let me know if y'all up on it too, family. But I'm gonna continue. So here's something I want to talk about. I want to give a big shout out and salute to my brother Linwood Reddick. I believe that's his name. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. 80-year-old Linwood Reddick. He graduated from college, for with a bachelor's degree in music from South Carolina State University at 80 years old. Our brother was a war veteran, and he put his college on hold to go serve in the war and fight for the country. And this brother made a promise to himself, and at that time, segregation and a whole bunch of racialized nonsense was going on. We still got it going on, but it was more so heavier back then. It was heavily going on, and racial discrimination. And this brother put his life on hold to go fight in the war. Most times, at that time, black people weren't getting proper respect, fighting for a country that never really properly, gave us our respect, not at this time, So I want to salute to my brother, and he made good on, the promise he made to himself of, going to back to college. He got his bachelor's degree in music, and that goes to show you that you can do anything you set your mind to if you keep the hope and, never give up. Because here, this brother could have said, I'm too old, I ain't going back to college, this, that, and the other. He could have just gave up, and said I'm old, I done did everything in life, but this brother still, made that promise to himself, kept that promise with himself rather, of getting back to college and, doing what he wanted to do. It's never too late to do what you want to do if you never like lose sight of your dreams, and your goals, and believe in yourself. It's most important that you got to believe in yourself. And I'm gonna play a little bit of this, but I gotta, they got some music playing in the background because it's just a short video. It was nothing really out much, as far as people covering this story of our brother, Linwood Rhetoric, 80 years old, graduating from, college at South Carolina University with a bachelor's degree in music. So I wanted to just, salute my brother, 80 years old veteran, FBA brother, and give him his proper, just due, give him his roses, So yeah, let's talk about it, family. Let me turn down the music so they don't hit me with a copyright or nothing like that. There you go, right there, family. I hope y'all can see it. I hope they don't hit me with a copyright for that little bit of music that played. Yeah, but our brother, standing on business, made good on a promise to himself. And, you can never go wrong when you believe in yourself, it don't matter who don't believe in you. People could count you out, say this, you ain't never going to be nothing in life. But long as you believe in yourself and never keep sight of that, and just believe in yourself and go after your dreams, nothing can stop you. And here we have, case and proof of that. Our brother at 80 years old, going back to make good on a promise he made to himself all those years ago when he put his college on hold to, go serve in the military. So salute to our brother, and much respect to him on that, moving right along. See, I ain't got too many people in here. YouTube be janky playing around with the notifications, not notifying people, keeping the views down. I notice it does that a lot on my videos. I have videos that should be doing, buku numbers that it keeps down. They keep the message down, they keep the messaging, suppressed. I don't like that, but then it'll signal boost, the degenerate nonsense. You know what I mean? But they ain't gonna stop nothing. They can't stop the program. Here we go, family. I don't know if any of the family knows who this sister is, but you should. Viola Ford Fletcher. Y'all should know that name because our sister survived the Tulsa race riots in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when they came and, burned down, bombed Black Wall Street, and she survived that, this sister. So, I want to salute to my sister. She's now turning 111 years old. And once again, her name is Viola Ford Fletcher. So I want to salute to my sister Viola Ford Fletcher. Now this is an old video, but of her, but from last year. But I still want to, play it and give her her proper, flowers, because they never atoned for that United States government on the bombing of Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And our sister, we ain't that far removed from this stuff. That's what I always, like to touch on these stories, and I like to, shed light on our elders, because our elders fought so we can have a better quality of life, and we can never forget that, family. So I want to salute to, and say happy birthday, belated birthday to my sister Viola Ford Fletcher on her 111th. She's seen a lot of, egregious atrocities, and things, misuse and abuse done to Black people. You know what I mean? And she's still surviving, and this is atonement need to be paid. This is further proof why cash reparations need to be allocated to foundational Black Americans, descendants of freedmen. But let's get into it, family.
And you attend a birthday party for the history books tonight. Viola Ford Fletcher is celebrating her 110th. She's lived through some extraordinary circumstances to reach this milestone in our Marvin Hurst.
That's a beautiful thing. Even though I never met our sister, I admire her and look up to her for her fighting and resistance and, still being here, to tell about, those crazy and horrific times, you know what I mean? And they just went to try to get, some compensation for, what happened to them down there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but they denied it, but something is eventually going to have to be done to, rectify the situation. Those, egregious, and atrocious things that were inflicted upon foundational Black American society. They eventually, the U.S. government going to have to atone, and the only way she could really atone is, allocating cash reparations to descendants of freedmen.
First was there for a birthday for Viola.
Viola Ford Fletcher is getting the finishing touches done to her face. It's for a night she'll never forget.
On the menu tonight, we have oxtails, we have lamb chops.
This is a party in Little Elm, and it's all about the super centenarian.
He's 110 years old today.
Cakes on the table, a crowd moving about the room.
Mind you, this video is from last year. Our sister Viola is, in fact, 111, so she's seen a lot in her lifetime. And I salute to my sister, I love the fact that she's still around, up and about, and not just laying around. She's still living her best life.
To kick off Mother's Day weekend, celebrating her birthday.
Oh, I'm real proud to be at this age.
Years some will never see.
As tough and crazy as your life has been, did you ever think you would live to be 110?
Sure.
Fletcher is said to be the oldest survivor of the Tulsa massacre in Oklahoma. In May of 1921, a thriving community called Greenwood became the target of a deadly attack after news of a black boy and a white girl on an elevator spiraled into stories that inspired rage. What is called Black Wall Street was torched, at least 300 killed, thousands left homeless.
You don't forgive somebody for them, you forgive people for yourself. Because it takes a lot of energy to hate people or hate a situation or to hate an experience.
Fletcher's experience is still remembered. She lived.
But something still need to be rectified, you know what I mean, to those crimes that was committed against foundational Black American society,
Beyond it, with a list of secrets to keep her going.
I have many, so many I can't mention, but it's a blessing to live this long and easy to do. If I can do it, others can.
Flowers and music come toward the feet of a woman who ran from the flames but rose from the ashes. In Little Elm, Marvin Hurst.
Yeah, I just wanted, take time to recognize our sister Viola and say, happy birthday, belated birthday to her on her 111th birthday, you know what I mean? But moving right along, family. Oh, never mind. I don't got no video for this. I just want to talk. Anybody following the Diddy trial, family? I'm hearing, a bunch of nonsense. They really ain't got nothing on Diddy, if you ask me. What do they really, got on Diddy, other than, him being a black man? What are they holding him for? They put all these bogus charges most of the time on, foundational Black American, prominent men in the entertainment industry. And this is done to destroy them. So, in my opinion, that they never, get to trickle down that generational wealth, because they really ain't got nothing on Diddy, if you ask me. Because they had, Cassie, from what I'm hearing, because they not, letting cameras inside the courtroom. I wish they was letting cameras inside the courtroom so we could see it and not be getting it, in like second person. We could be seeing it for ourselves in real time, because they saying Cassie took the stand, and, Cassie shouldn't even be able to take the stand, if you ask me, because Diddy gave her money, to keep this thing on the hush hush, whatever was going on. So she took that money, so everything else goes out the window. Her credibility goes out the window because she settled for the money. You know what I mean? Now, why they ain't right that Diddy, was putting hands on her, I'm not condoning that, but, they say that something was in that bag that she was taking, trying to take from Diddy, it was money, jewelry in that bag. So, not saying it's right, but that could, account for that, why he acted in such of a manner. But still, I'm not condoning it, you know what I mean? But to say, sex trafficking and things like that, they ain't got no proof or no receipts on that, because they had a male escort take to the stand, and he was saying that Cassie, was a willing participant. Cassie even wanted this, male escort, to pee on her. The male escort said basically that Cassie, was all with it. Cassie, in fact, wanted him to pee on her, urinate on her. So only thing Diddy is guilty of is being a freak, in my opinion, and that ain't no crime. Diddy ain't sex trafficked nobody. The whole case is bogus, and Cassie was a willing participant in some of it, but some of the things that they, was said to, have went on, with these freak offs and stuff like that, Diddy was, a freak boy, and he was way out of line and out of pocket, but in my opinion, but that still ain't no crime, because they said, Diddy would sit there and watch, as Cassie, got broken off by men, and, he would want that, the after effect of, the escorts having sex with Cassie, he would want that, poured on him. It's just wild. Diddy was a wild boy, but he still, ain't sex trafficked nobody. I don't see no proof and no evidence of that. We see it all the time of them trying to, tear down prominent black men in the eyes of the public. Uh, Smokey, Shannon Sharp, this, that, and the other. Now, while some of these brothers' actions I don't agree with, I'm still not never going to co-sign, them publicly destroying a black man, for no good reason and railroading him in the eyes of the public. I'm never going to sit around and, co-sign nonsense, because if they do that, sometimes they do things as a filler to test things, because if they can get away with it, they'll roll it out all over black society if we just sit around and, give them a pass to do this nonsense. So Diddy ain't guilty of nothing, you know what I mean? But even if Diddy got a good chance of beating this, I think, but even if Diddy beats it, what did that do to Diddy's career? Now, all the endorsement deals are pulling back from him, so he may never recover from this, because he's always going to have that, smut and that dirt on his name of being someone that, sex trafficked and things like that. Unfortunately, even though I don't think he did it, I think he's going to beat it, but he's still going to have a hard time, bouncing his career back. You know what I mean? Because once them kind of things get put on you, they follow you for the entirety of your life. You know what I mean? And he's just always gonna have that smut and dirt on his name. Unfortunately, I think, but I hope the brother can bounce back, because I don't truly believe Diddy guilty of anything. You know what I mean? And Cassie shouldn't have been able to take the stand after she took that money. What they trying to do is, just put anything, throw anything at Diddy to see if it sticks. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's gonna work. Hopefully Diddy come off of this, because I don't believe Diddy guilty of not a damn thing but being a freak. And like I said, being a freak ain't no crime. But moving right along, earlier in my broadcast family, I was talking about, some of the black sitcoms I've been watching, as of late. And, I don't know if any of the family is tapped in, but I heavily watch, Power, the Book of Canaan, and it just came, back out with the new season. So, our brother who plays the character Lulu, he's an FBA brother, and his real name is Malcolm Mays. He's really the nephew to our brother Tukey Williams, founder of the Crips, who turned his life around. And, Arnold Schwarzenegger, still, executing him, which I don't rock with. But I didn't know that. Any of the family knew that Malcolm Mays, the actor who plays Lulu, Rock's younger brother on Power, Book of Canaan, he's actually Tukey Williams' nephew. So I didn't know that. I just wanted to share it with the family, because that's interesting, But moving right along. Because like I said, I ain't going to be on here too long. Let me get into this. Let me pull this up. Video of this nonsense that they trying to, do. I know they talking about it. I don't know if they gonna make good on it, but they for sure as hell talking about, family releasing the race soldier Sean Grayson, who, unjustly, took our sister Sonia Massey's life in her own house. You know what I mean? And I don't rock with that. They saying he don't pose no threat to public, this, that, and the other. When they try to railroad black life, it just goes you to show that it just goes to show you rather than double standards that exist inside the so-called justice system, them racialized standards between white people and black people. Because we had a hell of a time getting our brother, Carmelo Anthony out on bond, and he acted in self-defense after, racist white supremacist brothers, jumped on him and attacked him. He acted in self-defense. And here we have it, Sean Grayson, and that was, clear cut and dry. That was on, camera of him, unjustly and wrongfully taking our sister Sonia Massey's life. He's a race soldier, and he done that because she was a black woman. And here they talking about, letting him out until his trial hearing, that he ain't no threat to the public. You know what I mean? And here they don't want to let our brother, what's his name, Rodney Hinton out. They saying he's a threat to the public, which Rodney Hinton ain't no threat to the public. Rodney Hinton acted off of emotion, and I think he was temporarily insane when he done that too, because they say he got some psychiatric problems regarding this whole situation, and he's on medication. So I think our brother acted just being temporarily insane. But here Sean Grayson, this is clear cut and dry that he's a race soldier and he killed our sister based off of race. And here we have it, they talking about letting him out. I'm gonna play y'all the audio and the video, family, fair use.
Right now, the Illinois Supreme Court is considering whether to release a sheriff's deputy from jail ahead of his murder trial. Sean Grayson is the former Sangamon County deputy charged with murder and official misconduct for killing Sonia Massey inside her Springfield home last July. Grayson says he shot Massey because he was afraid she was going to throw boiling water on him. In November, an appellate
He wasn't afraid. They look for any excuse under the sun. You fit the description. He was reaching for a gun. I was in fear, resisting arrest. They use any excuse under the sun just as a means to take black life. And I don't rock with that, nor will I ever, nor do I co-sign or endorse it. This guy ain't nothing but a degenerate white supremacist race soldier. He for sure as hell, deserves to rot behind bars. He don't deserve to get out for no amount of time because they said he don't pose a threat, but he for sure as hell poses a threat to the black community. We can't have him out here operating in the free world.
court ruled that prosecutors failed to provide sufficient evidence that Grayson poses a danger to the public. His attorneys say he has no previous violent history and has cooperated with the investigation.
And our brother Rodney Henton had no previous, crime history. He was a good, upstanding, citizen who went to work every day, who took care of his family, and he don't pose no threat either. So why are they willing to, think about, even the fact that they're thinking about letting Sean Grayson out is very telling. So why are they willing to think about that, but keep on denying our brother Rodney Henton, and he was an upstanding citizen. Our brother Carmelo Anthony just graduated from high school, straight A student, come from a good upbringing, and they weren't really willing to let him out on bond either till we gave pushback and resistance. It all goes back to white supremacy, family. You know what I mean? As much as they, everything is equal now in society, this, that, and the other, it's a gameplay. It's, a Jedi mind trick. It's not, all fair. It's an institution of white supremacy, designed to, give white folks a get out of jail free card and give them an unearned benefit system, a welfare system, which is white supremacy, but moving right along. I hope that bastard Sean Grayson ride in prison. I hope he don't get out for no amount of time, because if he do, I say we in FBA society get pushback to it. Pushback and resistance as we have always done. You know what I mean? But moving right along, keeping on that same, wavelength of, them talking about letting out, degenerate race soldiers. Here they talking about, letting Derek Chauvin out, nasty behind out, talking about pardoning him. It all goes back to the system of racism, white supremacy. Anybody that say racism, white supremacy, don't exist, this, that, or the other, they out of their minds. You know what I mean? They foolish. I think they fools in my book. They stupid as I don't know what, because Ray Charles could see that this is racism, white supremacy. When it comes to black life, even if we justified, in the system of racism, white supremacy, they still, convict us, and try to railroad us to the best of their ability, because not Sean Grayson, but Derek Chauvin was a case, a clear cut and dry case. He choked out our brother, and anyone that makes that argument, well, the foot wasn't on the neck, George Floyd had fentanyl in the system, that's a white supremacist talking point. So whenever they make that argument, family, in all actuality, what you're dealing with is white supremacists. But let's get into this video, family, fair use, because they talking about releasing, giving this degenerate a pardon.
At Harbor.
Well, they talking about just releasing Sean Grayson to his court appearance, and it's talks of a possible, it's in the mist, it's rumblings of it, talks of a pardoning of Derek Chauvin. Fair use.
Concerns tonight about new civil unrest over the murder of George Floyd. This month marks 5 years since his death sparked protests and riots here locally and around the world. And the city, county, and state are preparing for new potential protests. Jay Coles is here to explain why. Jay?
Yeah, Kevin, multiple sources tell me there are two things driving.
If you're new to the channel, family, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to, my channel.
This first, in recent weeks, we've seen calls from conservative commentators for President Trump to pardon Derek Chauvin. Second, sources tell me the city of Minneapolis is almost certain.
See, just the fact that, people are calling for, let me rewind that.
commentators for President Trump to pardon Derek Chauvin. Second, sources tell me the
protests. Jay Coles is here to explain why. Jay?
Now, Kevin, multiple sources tell me there are two things driving this. First, in recent weeks, we've seen calls from conservative commentators for President Trump to pardon Derek Chauvin. Second,
See, even the fact that, conservatives, and people in general are calling for the pardoning of Derek Chauvin, that all goes back to racism, white supremacy. It don't matter if they right wing, left wing, Democrats, Republicans, they both, practice anti-black racism, and they all, complicit in practicing white supremacy. This is why I don't rock with neither of them. You know what I mean? Because just the fact that they thinking about this, it's white supremacist activity. Because when it comes to, Rodney Hinton, he ain't given a fair shot, and the fact that it involved the officer, his alleged crime, where though they say he allegedly, murdered that officer, just because it involves the officer, that's overshadowing the fact that a race soldier took his son, unjustly. His son ain't have no damn gun. That race soldier was looking for any excuse, to lie and fabricate something as an excuse to take black life. And that officer is starting to overshadow. We still need justice for our brother's son. You know what I mean? And and we need justice for our brother as well. He shouldn't be, it wasn't premeditated because they showed him the video. Then he acted out. He wasn't in his right mind after seeing the video, and going out there, allegedly taking that officer's life. So we need that brother to get a fair shot, and we need justice for his brother. And just the mere fact that they willing to consider pardoning Derek Chauvin, and people are just talking about it, and the mere fact that, they thinking about, letting Sean Grayson out, for any amount of time, it all goes back to racism, white supremacy, nothing more, nothing less. But let's continue.
sources tell me the city of Minneapolis is almost certain the Department of Justice next week will move to end its consent decree over the MPD because it's happened in other cities. So preparations are happening now, just days before the 5th anniversary of George Floyd's murder. This is what Minneapolis looked like after.
They wasn't even going to give us foundational Black Americans justice back then for what happened to our brother George Floyd. We went out and got justice, with us, uprising, and rebelling against, the system of racism, white supremacy. That forced their hand, because if they would have had it their way, Derek Chauvin would have walked away a total and completely free man. They wouldn't have held him up to no justice. They would have coddled him and pampered him, like 9 times out of 10 they do when unjust race soldiers, take black life.
Former MPD officer Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, and it's something state and city leaders do not want to see happen again. I spoke with 6 total sources today. They tell me Governor Tim Walz, the Minnesota National Guard, Attorney General Keith Ellison, Mayor Jacob Fry, and Hennepin County Sheriff DeWanna Witt have all been briefed on a potential Chauvin pardon and the possible end to the federal consent decree that called for extensive reform at MPD. And tonight, law enforcement is now preparing for possible civil unrest if those two things happen. Mayor Fry is not talking about those plans, but as Commissioner of Community Safety, Todd Barnett, in a statement says, quote, "We've heard the same rumors as everyone else, but the bottom line is that Derek Chauvin would remain behind bars serving his state sentence even if his federal charges are pardoned. To be clear, we have no credible intelligence about any pardon or planned disruptions here in Minneapolis." Sources tell me the Minnesota Department of Corrections would be ready to take Chauvin from a federal penitentiary in Arizona to Oak Park Heights maximum security prison here in Minnesota. Attorney General Ellison telling MSNBC over the weekend, Chauvin's not going free.
He still owes Minnesota 22 and a half years, and he's going to do it either in Minnesota or somewhere, but he's not getting out.
Then
I don't believe he'll get out, either, but, you never know in a system of racism, white supremacy. So I just wanted to bring this story, both of these stories of Sean Grayson, them talking about, letting him out, to he has his trial, and, them talking about pardoning, both of these race soldiers and pardoning, Derek Chauvin, so I wanted to bring that to the forefront and put some light on it, because you never know in a system of racism, white supremacy, but I don't think so, but you just never know. And I also wanted to bring it out to show those double standards, them racialized standards that exist inside the so-called justice system. Because here we have it, they trying to railroad our brother, young brother Carmelo Anthony, good straight A student, who was just acting out, in self-defense. That's what that was the case of, and our brother Rodney Hinton, for his alleged crimes, of killing that police officer. Our brother, was temporarily insane. When a parent is faced with, somebody just took your son, in all actuality, you don't know how the hell you gonna respond to that. So he wasn't in his right frame of mind. So our brother shouldn't be railroaded. We still need justice for his son because they're hiding the identity of the race soldier. And our brother, Ryan Hinton, who that race soldier unjustly killed, he never had no gun. They fabricated that story as an excuse to take black life. But moving right along. Yeah, family, I want to talk about, I didn't talk about it, right when the story broke of, the black fatigue thing, because what black fatigue basically, it was a book, that we put out, to my knowledge and understanding, years ago of, black people being, tired of, injustice and oppression, being fatigued, with white society, and it was our word in general of us saying we were fatigued, with white society, white supremacy, and the unjust system of racism, white supremacy we under. Now, the white supremacists and, collaborators such as the Tethers and the Coon class to the system of racism, white supremacy, they want to say, yeah, we're fatigued, with black society being angry, committing crimes, so on and so forth. Ain't no such thing as black crime. You know what I mean? And if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, ain't nobody on the face of this planet more wicked and devious than the white supremacists. Everywhere the white supremacists have gone, they've caused mayhem and destruction, wiped out and genocided whole groups of people, enslaved people, pillaged, they done a whole bunch of rotten things, so ain't nothing more degenerate than a white supremacist, because I'm fatigued off of racism, white supremacy, and race soldiers running around here unjustly taking black life at the drop of a dime. And, 9 times out of 10, they acquitted and get to walk scot free, and I'm also, fed up with the white supremacist system, of, giving unearned benefits, giving white people a free pass to, practice their anti-black, racism, just a whole bunch of nonsense, that racist white supremacists do, So if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, black society should be tired of, white supremacist society, in which we are, because they always want to try to take and, flip and remix our stuff, such as what they did with woke. We use woke as a term, when we were putting it out to, say that, you woke to what's going on in society, you're not asleep. And they white supremacists flipped and remixed it to make it, some other thing that really don't even make no sense if you ask me. It's used now, to take an anti-black stance when they say woke. To me, it's used on them taking up an anti-black stance on things, So black fatigue, when in all actuality, black people should be white fatigue because the white supremacists are the most degenerate in society. You know what I mean? Every society, going to have crimes, but things in black society ain't limited to black society. When they come with the whole black crime, this, that, and the other, it's white crime in white society. So, it's no such thing as black crime, because it's not just limited to our society. The things that go on in our society, rather, go on in everybody's society. They just, propagate ours more and inflate it through propaganda, and them controlling the media outlets because that they control the media outlets because when we put truth to power out, and combat the false narrative that the white supremacists want out, they work to, suppress our content on the black grassroots. So, it's a manipulation tactic that they're using to falsely, boost up, false narratives of black crimes. They boost up black fight videos because the white supremacists, in all actuality, they sit around looking for these kind of things. And if you look for things, the algorithm is going to feed you more of that, So we ain't got nothing in it, that other societies don't. In fact, white supremacist society is the most degenerates in the whole entire world. They've done nothing but steal, rob, and maim people everywhere they go, cause destruction, and they the worst of the worst. You know what I mean? So we fatigue with white society. Stop trying to take our stuff and flip it against us. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there because they trying to run with this whole, of being black fatigue. Black people are just so unruly, so loud, and so angry. And we still going to need atonement. And if we know we're angry as black folks, we got a right to be, if you ask me, because foundational black Americans have never received atonement for the redlining, the slavery, the Jim Crow, and all of the other nonsense, that our ancestors was put through and that we face on up until this day. You know what I mean? Because 9 times out of 10, black people never get their just due. We even seen it when the Navy Federal Credit Union was denying black people loans, you know what I mean? Locking them out of, gaining capital, not too long ago, a few years back, and giving it to white people that, giving them the credit that they weren't nearly as qualified as the black ones. So it's double standards, and, it's all based on a system of racism, white supremacy. And if black people, we're mad, we got a right to be mad because we've never had atonement in FBA society, and things are going to eventually have to be atoned for, or else America's going to continue to face judgment until she rectifies the situation of enslaving foundational Black Americans and all the misuse and abuse that our ancestors had to suffer. So moving right along. I got to go over here to TikTok for this one, family. But that really gets me, mad that, they want to come up here and say some damn black fatigue, you know what I mean? And try to flip our, words. And, you got tethers and sellout coons running along with this whole narrative to get they butter biscuits from Mr. Charlie, you know what I mean? And I don't rock with that, to get they butter biscuits from the dominant white society, because the white supremacists, they'll have these buffer tethers, and these damn coons come out here and spew their rhetoric, and break them off on the back end, and we gonna call them out too. They gonna get it, they ain't exempt just because they got melanated skin, they ain't got a black mind, they've been Europeanized and they've been defeated. Anytime you as a melanated person gotta be reduced to spewing white supremacist talking points, you've been defeated and you don't get no respect from me. But moving right along. I want to go over here to TikTok. How do I want to do this? Because I want to show you some more. I believe the woman to be a tether. She's melanated, but she ain't of our lineage. I don't got her being a foundational Black American. And she over here spewing more the stupid rhetoric that white supremacist society loves to see. She's claiming that white people that got red hair are gingers. They're really, in fact, black, and they for sure as hell ain't no damn black people. White people walking around with red hair. You got white people, saying that they black now over here on TikTok. It's a new thing going on over here on TikTok. Where they saying that they black just because they got red hair, because the black tether is the one who started it. You know what I mean? And this woman is a tether because we don't have that kind of mindset, to say, for the most part, to get out here and say these stupid things. Of course, you got exceptions to the rules. You got coons and the sellouts, but I got this woman more or less being, a tether. And if she was, for some strange chance, a foundational Black American, she's hella off code, claiming that, white people with red hair are gingers and they're really black people, because the thing is, all people got some black genetics coming out of Africa, because Africa was the birthplace of civilization, but they became white. They had an ethnogenesis. They went up there, in the colder regions, and they got trapped up there. So even if them white people would have some great Black grandparents so far down the line, they're still a white person now, even if they got red hair. And the fact that they melanin deficient on a basic, elementary level, I could debunk her nonsense on that, because even if they got some red hair on a basic elementary level, they ain't got no melanin in their skin, and they ain't got no kinkiness of the hair, because having the kinkiness of the hair, it protects from the hotter weather, and the melanin in the skin also protects you. So she just out here, spewing, things to get clicks, likes, and views. People nowadays, the coons and the tethers and, the sellouts, they get out here and say, things that appease the dominant white society, and then they'll signal boost that while keeping us, on the Black grassroots, who's coming with that Black, FBA empowerment message. They work to suppress that because they don't want that, to get out here. They want the nonsense, the cooning and the buffooning to be out there. But let me get into this, family. Because I know this woman is, most likely a damn tether.
Guys, I found out who the Black Americans target was, by the way.
Pause that. I hate about TikTok. It always throws you into general, flow of the videos. It ain't just like YouTube where it could, you can go find what you need to find. It throws you into the algorithm of the videos. Find this video. A friend sent it to me. Is it here? Sorry about that, family. I couldn't find the video on TikTok, or else I would have. I mean, on YouTube, or else I would have just, kept it on YouTube, because I hate going around here on TikTok and fooling around for things. Where's my slider bar? Okay, I'm gonna show y'all first the tether that started this. She's a suspected tether to me, because she's off cold like a mug if she was FBA. That's why I got this woman being a tether. She's claiming that white people that got red hair, they're really gingers and they're really black people, which is a bunch of nonsense. Listen to this.
I just need to remind y'all again, everyone who is ginger, who has red hair, those are black people. All
No, the hell they not. Just because a person has red hair, they still melanin deficient. They ain't got the kinkiness of the hair, and everybody got some African genetics, at the birthplace of civilization. But they went up there into the cold, they got caught, and they developed that white pigment to help them out. So they ain't, no remotely close to no black people, and even if they got some black genetics so far back, you constantly, laying white, you become a new person. You had an ethnogenesis, so they're white people. The same gameplay they trying to run with the whole Pope thing. This new Pope, they want to say he's black. He ain't black. He might have some black people so far back, but he had an ethnogenesis. Constantly laying white, you become a new group of people. You know what I mean? Just like we as FBAs, we had an ethnogenesis over here on American soil. We became foundational Black Americans. You know what I mean? So this lady don't know what she talking about. She ain't got no proof or receipts to nothing she said. That the European with red hair, is really black. You know what I mean? And they're gingers. But the algorithm, what it'll do is signal boost this kind of nonsense. Because some white people, this appeases white people. And this could be, used. We gotta watch this too. This could be used as a tool to, crowbar some, fictional white people into our foundational Black American, claim to reparations, them claiming they black, because we see this all the time on Brother Tariq Nasheed's show. White people calling up, claiming some black genetics so far back, that they so far removed from it, even if you had a great, 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 great grandparent that was black, you ain't black no more. You had an ethnogenesis. You are a white person, you a new person. But let's continue.
gingers are black people. If they have red hair, they are black. You see a white man with red hair, that's a black man. You see a white woman with red hair, that's a black woman. Gingers are black. All gingers.
This woman is an idiot. You know what I mean? And she got white people, running around. That's why I'm giving pushback to it, claiming that they black. They for sure as hell ain't no foundational Black American. That's why I love the term foundational Black American as well, because it excludes people. Damn it being divisive, it's us claiming our lineage, and everyone can't, gravitate to it, and attach themselves to our, lineage. You know what I mean? Because look at this white boy, cosplaying, to be, black FBA. Now he running around, with our whole dress and swag, claiming that he black, and you got, tethers. I'm gonna say that they tethers, black women in the comment section, talking about how they like him, that he black, this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? That's why we gotta bring, watch what you view on social media though, family. Don't fall for the nonsense. There's a lot of people out here saying, things that ain't true, right, and exact for the sensationalism, and the algorithm will boost it. Remember this. Stop. I just want to. It won't stop. Damn. I don't want to get copyrighted. I didn't know it was going to play that. Yeah, but you get the gist of it, family. white dude cosplaying, like he a black man, this, that, and the other. It's a bunch of nonsense. And you got, tether black woman in the comments section calling him king. He ain't no black man, and you got the sellout tethers, in the coon class that'll push this kind of stuff, to get clicks, likes, and views, and hopefully I don't get, copyrighted for that. I just wanted to bring it to the family that on a basic, elementary level, that shit could be, brought down and debunked. He ain't no black man. And white people with red hair, they just white people with red hair, and if they did have some, black people in their family so far back, they still are white now. They had an ethnogenesis, you know what I mean? Just like they trying to claim with the Pope, Roland Martin's butter biscuit eating behind, trying to claim that the new Pope is a black man because he got some genetics so far back. He's a white man now. You know what I mean? We ain't gonna start that game of everybody trying to attach themselves to black society. You know what I mean? And say that they black. And you got white people. I will show y'all more videos, but TikTok be acting janky and it don't want to let me exit out of the videos, want to freeze because I hope I didn't get, copyrighted for that little music playing. But, you got white people running with this whole narrative that they black. It was one video where a white man was in a car talking to his kids saying, we black, this, that, and the other, and all off of a tether mammy, starting the whole thing, and got no clue of what she talking about. She ain't even got no receipts on nothing, so I just wanted to expose her, and put out, her to be the, for her to be as foolish and dumb as she is, because that woman is foolish and, she a tether, she's a tether. I got her completely and totally being a tether, but I ain't gonna be on here too long, family. I'm about to, I'm about to get off of here for real, for real. So I just want to tell the family to enjoy your weekend and, stay safe out there, and be aware because to be aware is to be alive. And if you haven't, like and subscribe to my channel, family. Peace. Oh no, family, I can't get off of here. One more thing, I forgot. Shit. Damn, I forgot. My bad. I forgot, family. I was gonna roll out, but I gotta bring y'all this. I didn't even bring y'all my closing story. Okay, let me get off of here. Dealing with this TikTok, and then got me, all unraveled and off topic of what I was discussing. Messing with that video stalling on me like that. But we here. I caught it. We didn't get off of here. I want to talk about the Louisiana plantation burning. That's significant. You know, and what that represents. I was listening to brother Tariq Nasheed's channel. He broke the thing down, eloquently. I like how he broke it down because with that, plantation burning, that signifies that plantation, burnt down, in Louisiana right at the same time. I think it was 10 or 12 inmates in Louisiana corrections. They, broke out of jail, and how they broke out of jail. They broke out of jail when the lights went out in the prison. They escaped their cell. They removed the toilet that was attached to a wall, and they gained their freedom. Because the whole plantation burning down with the whole prison thing, that represents, freedom of bondage. You know what I mean? Because that plantation burned down, and that was, used to enslave foundational Black Americans. And you got inmates escaping the prison. You know what I mean? And fire is significant too in metaphysics. But let me pull the video up. I'm glad I didn't get off of here. I'm like, I knew there was something else I wanted to talk about. Glad I ain't hop off of here being too quick. Where's it at? Where is it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Looks like 2-minute video. Was it that one? Might have been this one. Let me see this. I know it when I see it. No, that's not it. Sorry about that, family. Always have difficulty finding these. Here we go. Here we go. I remember that brother right there that was talking. Yeah, family, but the prison breakdown there in Louisiana, you know, them 10 or 12 convicts escaping. This happened at the same exact time that the plantation burned down. So that, you know, represents, you know, signals, you know, metaphysically freedom, you know, because um, the slave plantation and the prison, you know, they're in the same, you know, they're on the same like wavelength, you know, because the plantation is used to enslave our ancestors, was used to enslave our ancestors, you know, and out of prison, you know, enslaves people, you know, and enslaves a lot of brothers and sisters, you know. Prison is the only place where you know, slavery can still exist, you know. So they coincide, you know, they're the same, you know, in that regard, you know, is basically what I'm trying to say, you know. And also, you know, a lot of people profit off of this, you know, slave plantation down there in Louisiana. I'm hearing it's one of the biggest in the U.S. or it's one of the oldest, one or the other, you know. It might be one of the biggest and one of the oldest. I forget, you know, all of the exact logistics, you know, but it signifies, you know, a lot that, you know, that plantation has burned down because, you know, a lot of people just go to that plantation in the dominant white society, you know, for weddings, you know, and to have parties and things, and they disregard the blood, sweat, and tears of Black life that was lost, you know, on that sacred, you know, that was sacred in FBA society. Our ancestors' sacred blood was shed on those grounds, you know what I mean? And they just disregard that and go there, you know, just to have parties. And, you know, it's sadly and unfortunately, a lot of those white folks that go there, truth be told, you know, they reminisce when white society, you know, was doing better off and had Black people enslaved, you know. So some of them want to go there just for the, you know, historical, you know, wrongs that were done to foundational Black Americans on that soil. You know, they go there for that, you know, sole purpose, you know. So it's just, you know, not proper respect on, you know, them, you know, profiting off of that plantation, you know, and you know it's white owned, you know what I mean? Profiting off of that plantation still on up until this day. So the ancestors said, enough with that. We burning it down. We gonna wipe it out. And you know, at the same time that was going on, all of these Louisiana inmates, you know, got their freedom. You know what I mean? So it's, you know, and fire represents what I'm hearing. You know, I'm not too familiar with the whole metaphysical thing, but fire represents, you know, new beginnings metaphysically. So both of these two incidents happening at the same time, you know, coincided with one another. That was to put out a statement. The ancestors, you know, said we gonna have none of this, you know, and you know they got that thing up out of there. But fair use. Let's talk about this, family. Here we go.
Details this morning on that fire at historic Nottoway Plantation in White Castle.
Yeah, you can see the devastation to this historic home. This started around 2 o'clock yesterday in the afternoon. 166-year-old home on the banks of the Mississippi, now reduced to ash. And this was early on in the fire. This is a live look now at Nottoway Plantation.
That place go on, family. They said it employed a lot of people there, made a lot of money. This was used as a prop in like a lot of movies regarding slavery. So in all actuality, they was profiting off of this, you know what I mean? Without showing proper, you know, respect and, you know, paying homage to the ancestors. You know, a lot of white people like going there, you know, and seeing this thing, having parties, bar mitzvahs, and all type of, you know, get-togethers at this plantation because in all actuality, they want to relive, you know, Black pain, you know, white people, you know, profiting off of Black pain through the whole slavery thing, if you ask me.
Morning, right after 6 a.m., we're looking at about 20 hours since this first began in Iberville Parish. And what a shot there to see, be able to look straight through what used to be a huge plantation home. Obviously, the second and third floors are gone, and I don't think this would be able to be rebuilt. JP, a lot of weddings and other events planned for this spring and summer.
That's a very famous facade. It's appeared in movies, been in many pictures. It's a postcard for Iberville Parish, but as you can see,
they're talking about it being a postcard for parties, bar mitzvahs, popular in films, without recognizing the blood, sweat, and tears, you know, and Black, you know, blood that was shed on that land by our FBA ancestors, you know. So the FBA ancestors, you know, very well could have got this place up out of here, for the total blatant disrespect and disregard for black life.
Most of that facade is gone, and there's kind of a interesting shot there. April, I think that looks like what's left of a chimney that's still standing that extended up to the second floor. But as you can see, we've got firefighters. They've been there for more than 24 hours. They've been there all night, hosing down any possible hot spots. It just shows you how intense that fire was when it started to spread yesterday. They thought they had confined it to one area of the building, sort of to the left of what you're looking at there, but then it spread to the main part of the building, what they call the museum. Lots of artifacts, lots of historic mementos and paintings and things. And
see, they just focusing on, the profit, from it. That's not the word I was looking for, but for lack of a better word, they looking at the materials aspects of this thing. Was a place where memorabilia was held, where it was put on film, and parties were held here without acknowledging, the black blood that was shed on that land. That's total disrespectful, even on the part of the news people for, just, disregarding that, not talking about the slavery aspect, which was the most important one, that our ancestors, shed blood, sweat, and tears on that land.
Those, I don't know if those were destroyed. They managed to salvage some of those and get them out, but looks like it is a total loss.
Yeah, we did speak to someone yesterday about the significance of the history of this home.
And, everybody have their own opinions on Nottoway, but it is, it is White Castle. It's one of the biggest slave plantations in Louisiana. It's historical. Like I said, everybody have their own opinions on it, but as humans, as people, as White Castle, we have to think about the people, who's providing for their families while working in Nottoway, working there, no matter what their position was, it was still someone's livelihood, someone's job, source of income.
It was white people mainly profiting off of that. They profited off of our people being enslaved there during slavery times, and they were still profiting off of it on the back end, using it in movies and a whole bunch of nonsense, So, good written, The ancestors probably, got that up out of there, you know what I mean? Because, they wasn't paying, proper respect to the ancestors, Because Tariq Nasheed was talking on his show. I think he said, Brother Tariq was saying that, he was talking, or he seen something on social media where, somebody was saying that they went and visited a plantation, that they had one black person, working there showing you around, but he was totally off code, like he said, downplay slavery. He just talked about slavery, real quickly, when taking him on a tour of the plantation, and he downplayed it, like it wasn't significant, like we over it, no, hell no. We never gonna get over slavery, us real true foundational black Americans that's on code, and we ain't just going, stop talking about, the injustices and oppression that was done to our ancestors, you know what I mean? And it needs to be, talked about, more so. But, a lot of these slave plantations, it was just a bunch of nonsense going on, people profiting off of it during slavery, white people, and now they profiting off of it on up until this day, so.
Yeah, he brings up a good point. A lot of people employed there for many years. A lot of people come just to see it as tourists, people from all over the world, as we've heard. So thankfully, no one was injured. We want to make that clear. Fire officials are still working right now to see what caused.
They're just talking about the superficial things regarding the plantation. That's the word I was looking for earlier, without, acknowledging the black life, black children, black families, man, woman, and child that was on that plantation.
This fire, that investigation continuing. Of course, we'll bring you that when we find out. But right now, a live look again in Iberville Parish at the Nottoway Plantation. 166 years of history there. New this morning.
We still going to need rectified, and we now going to stop talking about that aspect, of needing cash reparations allocated to descendants of freedmen, because something got to be done, we still got a sister. I just showed her earlier on in the broadcast. She was was living, down there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when they bombed Black Wall Street, and she's going to need compensation. You know what I mean? She went They went not too long ago to try to get compensation for that. They was denied. So we going to need, compensation for the whole, entirety of FBA society, because the things that were done to our ancestors, we ain't gonna let them go, sweep them under the rug. As much as people want to, downplay it and don't want us to talk about our history, we're going to talk about our history, all day, every day, So I just wanted to bring that to the light that, this slave plantation down there in Louisiana burned down. At the same time, 12 prisoners, broke out of jail. So, that's very significant, So, peace to the family. Like I said, I ain't going to be on here. I'm about to get off of here, and have a good weekend. And remember to be aware, because to be aware is to be alive. Thank all of y'all for who tapped in with me, and make sure to like and subscribe to my channel, family. Peace.